With the popularity of Supabase, I'm going to show you how to create a Supabase AI agent. I have created 5 tools with Crew AI to make this work. By the end of this video, we will have a simple chatbot to talk with your database and have 5 easy to follow steps, starting with step 1, creating the Supabase table. You'll go to supabase.com, sign in, create an account. There's a free plan if you haven't done this already. But once you've done that, you can go to the dashboard. You'll create a new organization. You're allowed to have 1 with the free plan, and you can have up to 2 projects that are active. So I already have 1, and we're going to create a new project. I'm going to choose my organization. You're going to just create a simple project name, put in a database password, choose your region, and then select create new project. And then it takes a couple minutes to provision your database. So the next thing we want to do is actually create our first table. So you'll click on SQL Editor. And if you don't see that just yet, like I said, give it a few minutes. But on the left-hand side, if you just kind of hover over here, opens up the side panel, you can go to SQL Editor. Then I will have this for you so you can just copy and paste this, but we're going to create this table. Then you'll just go ahead and run this. It says success, no rows returned. That's great. Now we can go ahead and insert some rows. And I also have an insert statement to give you some sample data to work with. So you just highlight all that and then run selected. And then it's going to go ahead and insert all those rows. We can write a select statement, which I'll also give this to you, but you can say select all from lead. And then from here, we can just go ahead and run this as well. And it should give us all of the rows that we just inserted, and there were 25. Okay, wonderful. We now have our table set up. This is the year to learn AI agents. This is 2025. This is going to be an explosive year for them. And in my school community, I teach you and show you how you can make AI agents, make your life easier, use it for a business, save money, make money, whatever that may be. I will show you how to do that, which then leads us into our second step, which is establishing the connection from code to Supabase. And how we do that is once you create a project, you're going to create a file, and I will have all this in my GitHub for you as well. But we're going to install Supabase, the Python library. We're going to then import that, and we need to retrieve the URL and the key from Supabase. I'll show you how to do it in just a second. And then we have to create the client. Once we do that, I can do something like supabase.table, give it the table name, and do a select star. The asterisk means it selects everything from that table and then execute that. And this is kind of a simpler way to be able to write SQL to get something from the table. Now, to get the URL and key, if we go back to Supabase, go to home on the sidebar, then you scroll down a little bit, there is a project API. You're going to copy the URL and the key, and then in an .env file, you're going to paste those respective URL and key here. And now let's go ahead and try and run this. So I'm just going to say python getTheConnection.py, which is the file that I have. So once you have your URL and key set up, I'm going to press enter, and it should return all 25 rows of data, and it looks like it does. Okay, this is just sample data, so don't worry. Okay, great. That means we are done step 2 now. And we can move on to step 3, which is creating the Crew AI tools so we can have a chatbot with this table. All right, so I have 5 different tools. I have one to just get a single row from the table. I have one to get all of the rows from the table. I have one to delete a row from a table. I have one to insert a row into the table, and then also one to update a row of data in the table. Now, the goal for this was to actually have an AI agent with these tools so that it doesn't have to know what the table name is. It doesn't have to know what the columns are in the table. This is an AI agent that is going to try to figure out what I want and then retrieve that data. Okay, so if I want to update a row of data, I can, I might have some understanding of what I need to update, so I can give it the title or the lead name or whatever that may be, and it will try to update that. But if it can't, what it should do is then try to retrieve all the rows to make sure we have all the columns properly there, and then re-give that update so that it can properly update that row of data. Okay, so the goal is it's going to figure out by itself what it needs to do with me just giving it a little bit of information. And there's a couple ways that I'm going to show you how to do this. But with that said, now we're going to go into step 4, which is actually creating the crew. Now, as I've mentioned, I've done on my channel, there are multiple ways to create a crew. I did it a little differently this time, just so I have one file that helps show you this without making it a little bit more of a mess, because this is more of a learning tool, how to create these custom tools to pass on to an AI agent to actually do something with an external library or database. So here I have all the imports. I have the load.env to get the OpenAI API key, my basic Crew imports. I will come back to the Crew AI tools for file writer and string knowledge source. I will come back to those. And what I've also done here is if you wanted to use a custom LLM model, you could do that here. So I've created or instantiated an LLM object where you can give it the model, the temperature, and actually give it the API key. I know I had this hard coded. You would never typically do this. This is just for an example. So now I have an agent, and this is where we are going to give all of those tools. Now, how did I get those tools? You've seen the code here. Might look a little crazy, but from Supabase tools, I import all of these. So I get the get row, get all rows, the insert, delete, and update tool. And then I go ahead and instantiate all of those tools. And then in the agent, we'll have the role, the goal, the backstory. So you just basically copy that. Here I have the tools. I have this one be verbose so that we can see everything. And then here is the LLM that I'm going to give it. You could select everything from the table. You can get the table schema, right? You can get every table schema that you want that is connected to your database. You could potentially give that as table information in a .txt file. And then like for the initial, right? And then whenever we go back to our Crew, we could, with that text knowledge, with some, a somewhat recent update from Crew AI, you can have a string knowledge source. We could open that text file, read it, and then give that as knowledge to the agent. And then with the file writer tool, if something like, let's say I add a column or I maybe remove a table that doesn't exist anymore, whenever it goes to try and select all from that, it's going to see that, hey, that doesn't exist. Well, then what it should be able to do is overwrite that table info.txt file, say, hey, this doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to remove this as knowledge source. Or if, like I said, I add a column, well, if I try to insert and it doesn't work because, hey, there's a column that is necessary, it can't be null. Well, then it's going to try and fill that in with something, and then it can update that same .txt file to say, hey, that changed. Let me fix this. So now I have the knowledge for other future, any other query statements, right? And then everything else is pretty simple. I have the task, which is just to answer a question. I set up the Crew, and then I just have a while loop so that I can keep asking questions. Well, not really just ask questions, have it execute statements. And with that said, let's go on to step 5, which is actually testing it. All right, well, let's start off with a simple statement. Let's say, can you give me all the data from leads table? So it worked. It already gave me information. So what it did was it used the get all rows tool. All right, so let's go through here, right? It also gave me the count. So if you remember, the output tool had all the results plus the count. All right, that was simple. Now I copied a phone number, and I'm going to ask you to just get that row of data. So can you give me the lead with this phone number? Okay, so I just gave it that phone number. Now the thing is with these tools, it's going to use multiple tools, right? Because if I say, give me this phone number, it's going to have to first search to get the data to see which number that is aligned to. So it's going to use the get all rows tool first, see which one that is, and then it said, oh, okay, you know what? Here is all of the information. So actually in this case, it didn't need to use just the single get row table or get row tool. It got all of them and said, hey, here is the information for that person with that phone number. Okay, great. And this time I asked it to delete a row of data with that phone number in the leads table. And I didn't give it the proper phone number column name. So it came here, it got the get row tool this time. It was able to retrieve that data, and then it used the Supabase delete row tool. And then now that is successfully been deleted. Okay. And now what I want to do is, by giving it a little context, we don't even have to be as specific as we need to. All right, I'm going to give this to you as well, but back in Supabase, if you go to the SQL editor, you can use this to basically get all the public schema, which is where all of our tables are going to be, unless you do something otherwise. But for now, they're just going to be in the public schema. So with this, It basically gives all of the table names and their column names, the type, if they're nullable, whatever, all that stuff, right? So what I could do is I can now export this and copy this as Markdown or JSON or CSV, whichever you would like to do. Move this into the table_info.txt file. And then I asked it to make it a text instead of Markdown. I'm going to add that knowledge to the prompt because I think right now there's something wrong with the knowledge sources with Crew AI. So until they have the next update, then that'll work. And then what I asked is, can you update all phone numbers with 4 5s in it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So now it knew to just look at the table name leads because it has some context now that I gave it. And then with the tool output, it tried to first get all of the rows of data that are relevant that have that phone number with 4 5s. It found relevant rows. Some of these have just 3 5s. That's okay. We can deal with that later. But then for each of those data, right? So it probably gets the IDs from each of those. Then when it goes ahead and updates each of those phone numbers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it called the update tool now 5 different times. And then at the end, it's going to basically tell us that the phone numbers containing 555 have been successfully updated to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and now I asked it to give me all the rows of data with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in there. So to find all the rows with that phone number, it will use the get row tool to search for rows in the leads where the phone number matches, where the phone number column matches 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it did that, and it got all of them. So there's, I think, 1, 2, there's 3, 4, and 5. Yep, so it looks like it got all 5 back to us. And then I finally asked it, can you give me all leads with the first name Xena as another example? It did. It just used the Supabase get row tool and retrieved that information for us. Again, with this, using these many tools, one of the things that I would say is setting up the prompt. If you want to delete something, make sure that it exists first. So if I give it some value, it can figure out which column it goes to, maybe try to use a get row tool to make sure that it exists before it tries to delete that row data. If it doesn't exist, then you just want to return, hey, that there's no value where that exists in the table. Can you give me something else? Okay, so this is like, you can make a chat with this so that each time it's trying to have some thought process, which it does with Crew AI, and then it'll use the correct tool in order to accomplish whatever you're asking it to. Thank you for watching. And if you're not super familiar with Crew AI, I have a full course here that I released not long ago that goes over everything that you need to know about Crew AI. Again, I have a school community that you can join down in the description below. Free 7-day trial. There is no obligation if you don't want to stay, but I promise you that you will not regret it. This is the year to learn AI agents. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next video.